Welcome to episode 3 of The Power of Visualization. As I said in the last episode, we use negative perceptions, in other words, the meaning that we give to what happens to us. We use those negative perceptions to actually create a vicious cycle that we cannot escape from. Because we interpret our circumstances as some sort of fate, in other words, something negative happens to you, so you believe that's what will always happen to you, then you use the visual power of your mind to envision a future that's very much like the past. You just see yourself struggling for the rest of your life. You say, I'm always going to struggle with these things. I'm always going to deal with these things. No, you won't. Not if you actually become a person filled with determination, which means you have the ability to create the future that you want. So you've got to check your negative perceptions, and you've got to check your negative visualization each and every day. Today, I want to talk to you about the inner screen of the mind. I talk about inner eyes. You can also view the visual power of our mind as like a movie screen. They're getting to the place now where they're so advancing the technology of high definition projection through television or what have you. Their goal is to get it to, where it's just this, where all senses are gone and all you see is, completely filled with screen. You get that in some of the IMAX theaters where the actual screen begins to bend so that even the peripheral vision is covered by this. So you are completely absorbed in what you see. So the bigger the screen and the more it encompasses your vision, the more you are absorbed in what it is that you're watching. Now imagine that on the inner screen of your mind. Because if you can be completely absorbed like that, with the all-encompassing screen of the inner screen of your mind, then you can imagine how that is going to greatly affect what you believe about yourself and what you believe about the future. So the inner screen of the mind is where everything is projected. Not just individual images, but actual stories. I mean, we did this as kids, right? We imagined stories. We sat in our room and played with a doll or army men or what have you, and we were able to occupy ourselves because we were absorbed. We had to use the power of our imagination to make toys come alive. You've seen the movie The Toy Story, right? It's the toys come alive. Well, there's some truth to that in a way. We did make those toys come alive when we were kids. When we went out and played, with our friends, we did it in a way that it became fun for us as kids. Would not be fun for an adult, but it became fun because of our imagination. When you could turn a stick into a gun, it's done by the power of your imagination. You didn't become bored with it because of the power of your imagination. You still have that power. You just use it for things that are much more frightening, much more dire. When you speculate about how you're going to suffer, financially, when you speculate about how things always go wrong in your relationships, when you speculate about how your health is going to turn out, that you're going to get cancer like so-and-so did. This is also stories, and you play them out. You can get lost in thought thinking about very, very negative things, and it overcomes your emotions. It overwhelms you. And what you're imagining isn't even happening at the time. You're just simply using the visual power of your mind. My second son is a filmmaker and videographer, and he's always wanted to do that. Since he was 5, 6 years old. Once he could start messing around with a video camera, he used it, and he's been making little movies since he was small. And he is a very intelligent kid. He graduated with a 4.0, multiple honors, etc. But he watched movies and TV series dozens and dozens of times. He would watch something like the entire Lost series or the entire 24 series. He would watch those easily 12, 13, 14 times over and over. And those are long. He would watch movies over and over again. He would come home from school, sit down, grab a snack, do all of his homework, get it done, and then spend the rest of the day playing video games, watching movies, etc. Now, we would, of course, talk about Joseph, which is his name, and say, is this harmful to him? But what we realized soon enough is that Joseph was filling himself with storylines, characters, editing. And so by the time he graduated high school, again, as an honor student with a 4.0, I'd asked him, I said, where do you want to go to school? And we talked about certain film schools, obviously. And he said, I don't want to go to film school. And I asked him why. And he said, because I just don't think that they're going to be able to teach me much. And I understood what he meant by that. He didn't want to spend, a couple years and a bunch of money studying, Italian film history, for example. There was one school that had 3 courses just in Italian film history. It's not that these things are not of interest to him. He just didn't see them as valuable. What he wanted to do was get right to work. Well, it was easy for him to say that because he had filled his mind for so many years with every conceivable film angle, every kind of story, every kind of narrative. He could act it out. He could write storylines and scripts like it was nothing because he had so soaked his mind in that all of those years. But one day as we were talking, I said to him, I said, Joseph, the only thing that I would say to you is to make yourself better at what it is you do. Maybe you don't need to study film. Maybe you don't need to go study the technology per se. I said, but I would encourage you to do this. I would encourage you to think about what fiction writers, what novelists do, what they have to create without movie budgets, without cameras, without lighting. And what he began to understand himself was that, there was tremendous power in the visual power of the mind. And so if he could learn to rely upon that inner screen, learn to rely upon what goes on in the inside and not just what goes on the outside. And in one discussion we had, I said, the difference between a film or something that takes place on screen that you see here and the few inches from your physical visual power to your inner visual power, just those few inches is a difference of well over $150 million. Because it costs $150 million plus to create that visual story on the big movie screen. But a novelist isn't writing for a big movie screen. A novelist is writing for the inner eyes. And so you save $150 million the more you can tap into the visual power of someone's mind. And that was a tremendous eye-opening revelation to my son. And he realized that don't be concerned so much about the special graphics and all of the visual and all of these things that are nice to have when you're creating a story. But if you can learn to tap into the visual power of people's minds to get them engaged in something, then you've really tapped into something. And so for you, what is it about your mind and your story that you are visualizing? It's not just, again, what you see with your physical eyes that's real to you. It's with those inner eyes. Just like you can be taken captive by a good novel, so also can you be taken captive by the visual stories that you're creating. So I want you to see that you are that novelist. You are that movie maker. You are the one that is creating these visual stories. Are they good and healthy, or are they detrimental and damaging? What story are you creating for your life? We'll talk more about that in the next episode. Can you dig it? I hope you can.